We are really looking forward to listening to everybody and starting the discussion. Um, uh, in all of the options that we're going to be showing, all of them will be ADA compliance, walkable, bikeable, and also connection to the south side buffer path. So all of them are looking at that. We have four options right now. Of course, on the Austin Home Depot, the spiral, the U-turn, and the last one, which is like the new one that we haven't shown to anybody. Most of these, the first three, most people have seen it. So I'm going to go very, very fast so then we have enough time to actually do the discussion. So this one is the access ramp. It's on the depot area. What's nice about this is basically located in the area that it was before. That is currently it's there, and the least impact in terms of the the parking area, because we're making it the new one is widened but it's close to Cambridge Street, and it's that's not the right word, but it takes as few parking as possible, and then it connects to Franklin Street into the shared use path. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is not possible, and it has been dropped because it is a historic building, a historic district area, and whatever it is that we cut into the property, it will impact in terms of the permitting due to the 4 Act taking. Next. This we love because what it does is it gives the opportunity to reconnect what was the Franklin Street, not just visually, but also physically. Of course, what we really want was to make it like straight direct on the Franklin Street itself, but there's so much utility underneath and on the tunnel, so we have to shift it back a little bit, but we think that still create that kind of connection. And this particular structure is done in a cable stay, and it can look really iconic, but it's not because we want it to be cable stay, but the cable stay is answering a calling, because what it does is it allows us to like straddle the area that have a lot of the utility. So it's very functional as well as aesthetically pleasing. What's more about this is as much as we can, everything is not ramping, but more like very gentle incline. So there's no like ramp. So for bicycle, it's much more preferred. Although on the Lincoln Street side, we still have a switchback, and it's a hairpin switchback. So that's not exactly desirable. Also, the nice thing about this option is that it creates an open space. And so this area is really lacks open space. So this whole place, it can be like really welcoming. And there's the option of taking the stairs or doing the loop. So then not everybody have to use the loop, which is siphoned off by the stairs. So we really like this one, but we have to take a lot of the parking and also the billboard as well as the ACE building. So that's a huge downside to this one. Next. So this one is the other one that is basically good, not as good, but it starts from Franklin Street on one side and then Franklin Street on the other side. But instead of going straight, you have to take a left or a right to go around this big loop. And there's a few problems with it. One is part of it on Lincoln Street is still ramping instead of a smooth incline. There is a pinch point that is about 10, 12 feet that is shown here on the A, yeah? And also, we feel like from the bicycle and the person walking, it doesn't feel as safe because it will be along the railroad track and behind buildings because we assume all Green Tree Street will be developed. Also, right now, the 35 Green Tree Street building is already built, and this is really abutting it way too close. What's good about this is we're not taking any parking, and also the A-sticker building remain. One other thing that this is also negative is that because this area is located very close to the next station, the railroad track have to meet that next station. So it's pretty high. So that's why it's very long in order to clear the railroad station. Yes, sorry, thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. So Eddie, I'm just going to chime in real quick here because one note on this is that recent developments and with the West Station layouts is the rail, the tracks are kind of shifting around in here. So, as we've been currently developing this concept, what you're going to see today assumes the 4 tracks. If that does change, that would obviously alleviate some of these challenges that we have with the width and even maybe having a little bit of buffer available along this property line here. But, that's something to be determined as some of these West Station and track alignments get kind of not so much finalized. We don't really use that term, but as they advance, and if that is the case, we would definitely modify this concept accordingly and show what those changes could be. So just wanted to kind of let everybody know that.
Thank you. Yeah, this shows like how close it is as it is planned right now. Jim, do you want to talk about this?
No, you can go now. Yep.
Okay, so we had a charrette or a big workshop recently, and one of the questions that was asked was, it is so long to go around. Is there a way to have 2 bridges? So one is going around for the bicycle and the wheelchair, and then the other one is a more direct route using the stairs. So this is what we have, and there are several constraints that this does not answer. One is it's right now because of the entry on the Lincoln Street, we have to put this bridge right smack on the area that has a lot of the utility. And also, if you're doing it this way on Franklin Street on the south side, you basically, yes, you do not take the building of the 8th Street, but you are impacting the surface because that they have this parking on street parking that really serve the building. So yes, it's possible to have 2 bridges, but it's not ideal. Thanks. So here we are on the 4th one. That is really interesting because this is only possible because of the replacement of Cambridge Street. This is why we never thought about it before when the Cambridge Street was as is. What's nice about this is there's no ramping. In terms of connectivity, you not only will be able to then connect through Cambridge Street and Franklin Street into the south side buffer path, but also it creates a much more direct connection to Linden Street. And I believe a lot of the people who are biking using that route to go downtown and to go south. Yes. And what's also really good here is that the team was able to lower the railroad track a little bit. So in terms of the clearance, the height is less. And one of the concern is that potentially this will impact the existing connection, the existing loop now, because it's really on it. But we think we could figure it out to make it adjacent to it. So if there is any closing, it will be short, very short to just connect it. But we can build it while the other one is still being used. So we think this have really, really a lot of potential. And in terms of look, I think we can always make it look good. And the width is also good. There's the connectivity is good. Do we have more? And this is just a beginning. So we're not married to the elements, but it just gives some sort of a leap of what it can be. And we are very excited on the possibility of this one. Oh, the major thing is we are not impacting any of the Arcan family's property. Ace building is still there. Billboard will still be there. Parking is totally intact. No 4F impact. And so we think that this really has a real potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. And I just wanted to note real quick on this plan view here that the bypass road is just not shown. The Cambridge Street bypass road, it would be tying in here. It's just not shown on this graphic. And that's what we have for the intro. We have additional graphics of the four options that will be showing as we, through the discussion. But that's the end of the introduction slides.
Thank you for the introduction, Jim. We have a couple of hands raised. Galen?
Yep.
Galen?
Great, thanks. Thanks, Eddie. These are great developments, I think. And, those of us who've been looking at these over the years, I really appreciate that you are still being innovative with the options and the limitations. One question I want to have is, do these incorporate what would potentially be a kind of a supplementary pathway along the Lincoln Street side that I know that has also been looked at, which is a priority of the city of Boston if they're really going to go through with creating Lincoln Street as a corridor for cyclists and a pathway which would basically be kind of Market Street all the way to potentially this bridge and up and over, and how the different options here can play into what would feed into or have a flow from and to, and how that might change depending if there is a pathway on the north side as well.
Yeah, Galen. Yes, we're essentially. I'm trying to open a PDF here. I think I just lost connection to my my work network, so I'm going to need a few minutes. But we've essentially assumed. And I'll go back up to the U-turn if I can get to it. The answer is yes. Let me just try to get these open, and we can move on to other questions. But we'll see here in a few minutes.
I appreciate that.
Sorry, Galen.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. No worries, no worries. And maybe just like in the future, maybe to think, I really appreciate the scale that we're looking at because it allows us the detail, but to have like zoomed out so that we're looking at what the assumed kind of flow would be. I like to call it a bike shed as like a corollary to a watershed. Thinking of everybody who's coming in from Watertown and coming in from Cambridge from the north and coming in from BU from the east, so that these are, we used to use the term nexus to refer to some of these connectivities. So to think about how this would play into the grander network of pathways and really just connectivity. So that's my encouragement for, demonstrating the real power of what we're going to be building here.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you, Galen. And Matthew?
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to kind of carry across. So first of all, thank you to MassDOT and to the project team for presenting all of these in comparison. I think, and also I will say the city did get a little bit of a tiny preview of the alternative 4, and I think, and we're happy to see it presented here. I think we're really excited to see this taken seriously as an idea. I think the city thinks that it definitely has some promise and agrees with MassDOT that it addresses some of the issues with some of the other alternatives. I think I just want to highlight the city priorities that we have looking at these alternatives. Safety, we see this as an extremely high traffic and bike and ped route. As Fred Salvucci likes to say, it's the old path to Brookline. There's a rising population north of the Turnpike, active commercial areas south of the Turnpike. This will continue to be a busy crossing, and it should be made safe for both bikes and peds and all users so that those needs don't come into conflict with each other. It needs to be safe for everyone. It needs to be accessible, needs to be easy to use for all, and to do the most possible to reconnect the community and create that connection across the Turnpike. We're glad to see the assumption of the full reconstruction of the Cambridge Street Bridge, and I want to call out like how that enables an accessible Cambridge Street Bridge due to the reduction of grades on the approaches. Tying into what Galen said, we really appreciate the focus on connectivity. This is part of the regional pathway network. Franklin Street is a key bike corridor in the city of Boston, seeing at times 40% bicycle mode share. It's connected to the river. It's connected to other key connectors on and off streets. For us, that means we're looking to ways to minimize the path length and make sure that we're providing usable and useful connections for bikes and peds through this area that don't take them too far out of their way, which we think many of these alternatives do. And of course, we also want to see impact minimization. The city, we've had many discussions with the Arcan family, and we do value the presence of these businesses. Like these are, in the Ace Ticket building, that's 8 small businesses constituting a vibrant part of the Alston Village commercial fabric. And we're glad to see alternatives presented that do reduce the impact on those businesses. So just wanted to carry across as framing how the city is interpreting some of this stuff, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Matt. And we certainly know that potential change is going to open on the bridge, will open up possibilities. Harry?
Hi, thanks, Eddie, for showing us these new options, and it's great to see you continuing to work on improving the U-shape by adding the possibility of the direct connection across the highway. So thank you for doing that. I guess I'm curious how we're going to be able to get into the really, nitty-gritty details of all of this, especially trying to talk, when we can't even point at a map together. I think some key questions about the new Cambridge Street option that come up, like Galen and Matt said, we need to be taking a regional and a local view of all of these different connections, because part of it is, okay, if I live on Holton Street, how do I get to the hardware store? But then there's also, okay, if I'm commuting from Watertown to downtown Boston on a bike, like how does all of this stitch together? And so we need to be looking at both. And so I look forward to there being, opportunity for us to do all of that. The idea of having a ramp basically dump you right out onto Cambridge Street across from Linden to say, well, let's make Linden to a footbridge of much more heavily trafficked route is interesting, but it certainly creates a whole set of, its own issues that we would need to discuss. How does that connect to the South Side People's Pike Paths? Another question, because it's not really, clear how any of those connections would work on that Cambridge Street side. Maybe they can be worked out, but it's hard to know at this early point in the game. I'm also curious your thoughts about the construction of this, because certainly the U has the benefit of being constructible before Cambridge Street is rebuilt, and it's sort of completely separate in that way. But in this case, once you start tearing apart Cambridge Street, and that's a pretty big multi-year project to lower its elevation, it seems like then we have no footbridge and no connection across the highway at all. What can you share some of your thoughts on that, Jim or Eddie?
Yeah, no, Harry, I totally, so thinking about constructability, the challenge is like the U-turn, at first it seems like, looking at it, and we do think there are benefits to the U-turn for construction. The challenge we have now is that U-turn will not, the best layout and the best concept requires the proposed rail to be completed, right?
Yep.
As well, because we're lowering the tracks. The profile of the rail is changing horizontal. Let me just start sharing this PDF now to help. I definitely, looking at these concepts for some time now, that the U-turn has definite benefits in that area. And let me just start. Yeah, we looked at 3 different options with the stair crossing, but so again, we're showing here the 4 tracks. There's concepts being developed that take this 4 to a 3 and shift the tracks north. If that happens, that pinch point goes away. There's more opportunities.
Yep.
To get some space here, but all that rail work has to be completed, and it's lowering of the profile. So now that it's a bridge replacement on Cambridge Street, it's almost tied to the replacement of the Cambridge Street as well. All of these, every option, not just this one. So that's the challenge that we have. Understanding it gets, no matter when it's constructed, it does get it outside of. The proximity to the Cambridge Street bridge work, but what throws a kink in it is the requirement for the rail to be completed.
Yeah, when's that analysis going to be done? Because we had a meeting, last summer or last fall, where there were questions about whether there'll be 3 or 4 tracks in between, Boston Landing and Cambridge Street, and it sounds like there's still open questions about the track layout between between Boston Landing and Cambridge Street, 9 months later.
Well,
so
I think
I'm not sure how we really make this option the best it can be if that's still lingering. So what's the timeline?
I think I appreciate it. No, I appreciate the question, and I think even during this working group, there'll be some advancement there, and there may already be. It's just a matter of being if we can show that, right? We could, because I think we're starting to assume that on a couple of the options. When these were developed most recently, we were saying this is what it would be with the 4 tracks, but we can definitely develop this U-turn with the 3 to show what the differences could be. So definitely appreciate the comment, but we wanted to stay conservative in case it remained 4. But an option is to go to the 3, and it could move forward that way. So it is probably time to do this concept with the 3-track layout to show what the differences could be. Yep.
That would be great. And just one more thing for now is, what are you assuming as elevations over the rail and the highway? Because maybe I'm reading your drawing wrong.
No, we're assuming 14.5 over the highway and 18.5 over the rail. And it's kind of a hard line for the T, that 18.5. And VHB, I don't know, I don't think Greg is on, but.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry, Greg. Yeah. Oh, you are. You talked about, I'm sorry. There's so many people. But Greg can speak to that a little bit more than I can.
Sorry, what were the numbers again? Just, I missed them.
14.5 highway, 18.5 rail. It's going to be greater at a pedestrian crossing, and as a result of the rail being 18.5, it's going to be higher over the highway, just as a result of the need to clear the rail. So, and at pedestrian crossings, we don't want to hold that minimum because of the sensitivity to the pedestrians. But the 18.5 for the rail is kind of driving, the elevations.
Yep, and that's a clearance that we're holding everywhere throughout the project. Really what that number comes down to is it does not preclude future electrification. Anything less than that would. And it also helps with any of the freight needs coming through here, as well as Susan kind of noted. There are multiple railroads running through here that have rights to operate on this line. So we have to be cognizant of all of them at all times. So 18.6 is what we're holding for rail, and we'll continue to.
Okay, in the Prue Tunnel, the elevation for rail is what?
It's less than standard. I'm not sure what the number is off the top of my head. And if they wanted to do any kind of future electrification in there, they would have to do work to that tunnel to lower the tracks to really make that feasible. So it's not really what we're using to set the standard for what we're trying to do here.
Right, I just think it would be good to discuss what the trade-offs there are, because they're considerable, right?
Thanks, Jim. Is there anyone from VHB who would also be helpful to weigh in some of the questions that were raised?
Yeah, no, Greg just did, Francisco. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, just on the constructability issue, when we come back to this in the future, if you guys could give a more clear breakdown of what you see the timeline being from when the Franklin Street footbridge that we have now would get demolished until, or be non-operable as Cambridge Street is being rebuilt, to then Cambridge Street being rebuilt and lowered and a new footbridge built, and how many years we're talking about either no crossing at all or a very compromised crossing during construction. And if you have any thoughts on that now, that would be helpful.
We very much appreciate the question, Harry. It's challenging. We're definitely thinking about it and working on that, but haven't made a lot of progress because of the amount of changes to the rail, and now with the Cambridge Street Bridge replacement and staging it with the rest of the project. We don't want to talk about it too prematurely. I mean, it's obviously early. Whatever we come up with staging is a concept for permitting that could be drastically different than what a design build contractor chooses. But however, our purpose is to come up with a feasible approach to the constructability. So that is, something that we're very concerned with and working on, and are not by any means not holding anything back, but we just don't have an answer right now.
Yeah, that's fine. The question is more when, are we going to have an answer while this working group is still meeting? Because the presentation was like, hey, this Cambridge Street connection is great. It's almost wonderful and fantastic. But yeah, it's really different if we're not going to have any connection for 3 months or 3 years. And somehow, we need to put all this stuff really clearly out on the table.
Yeah, and understood. But just to kind of complete that conversation on our, the constructability, is that all the options are going to have similar challenges to maintaining and constructing the new one. However, I totally, anything that gets away from the main project area, like the U-turn, clearly has, the potential benefits there. And just to, back to Galen, your question, we're assuming a cross-section for that future City of Boston project for the Lincoln Street shared use path, the addition of that. And that's kind of what we're doing in these graphics. And I'll zoom in here. And this hashed area. So we've modified the spiral, the switchback ramp, and we've modified each of these to account for essentially 5-foot minimum sidewalk, and that's just assuming what's there today. The intent would be to increase that 10-foot travel lanes, 3-foot buffer, and a 10-foot shared use path with a buffer, obviously, to the Franklin Street ped bridge. So that's kind of what we're assuming in laying these out to ensure that the noise wall and the ped bridge options fit within that. Like, for instance, the spiral, as a result, from what we've been showing historically, the spiral version had to shift south, and we're actually taking up some of I90 shoulder here, which is essentially similar to the existing condition where you come out from under the Cambridge Street Bridge. There's no shoulder, and then when you clear it, it opens up to the west. That condition here, as the new I90 westbound on-ramp comes in, that similar condition would just last longer. You'd have a narrower shoulder, and then it would open up as you head west. So it accounts for, schematically accounts for the Lincoln Street noise wall, as well as the future Lincoln Street project.
Hey, Jim, the next time you show us a
Thanks,
version of
Jim.
these
Sorry,
drawings,
Matt. Sorry, Harry.
just a quick question. When
We
there's
want
a
to
lot
give
of
the
stuff
space
on
for
these
others
drawings
to
that makes it
ask,
really
and
hard to
we already
understand.
had someone raise a hand and drop it. So Harry, I'll hold up on that for a second, if you wouldn't mind. Cassandra, you had your hand raised. Could you elaborate on your question or confirm that it was answered? Cassandra, I just want to make sure that you had the opportunity to ask your
This is the
question.
interpreter. I'm trying to decipher that. Bridget, feel free to jump in if you can help me with this.
I didn't see it. It was glitched.
Hold on one second.
I'd like to say that.
Can you spotlight her, please? Cassandra,
I can do that.
thank you.
Oh, it didn't work. Oh, my Wi-Fi is a little bit spotty.
I
Sorry
think she
about
is.
that. Unfortunately, I have to go. With the interpreter having a hard time seeing her signs.
Jim, maybe if you drop screen share, we can spotlight her video to make it larger for
That would
folks.
help. Thank you so much.
Okay, she is saying, I'm sorry that I need to go.
That I have another meeting right now.
But thank you so much. Happy Friday, everyone. It's been great seeing all of these proposals, and I will see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And Matt, I think that you had your hand raised also.
Yeah, happy to jump in here. I think one question, I had taken this to some city folks, and one question we had, I think, was related to some of the questions that Galen raised earlier, and I think that Harry touched on around the connection to the South Side buffer path. I think one obvious compromise with the Cambridge Street connection alternative is that, any connection to the South Side buffer path or to places west of where it intersects with Linden Street will be done via either the sidewalk or on-street facilities for bicycles. I think the key concerns we have on the city side are making sure that we really think through the operations of that, making sure we understand what that crossing at Linden Street, were it to be chosen, would look like, and kind of just gaming out, because I think what we're concerned about in any of these alternatives is making sure that there was enough room on the pathway and enough room at any of the crossing points and access paths for safe coexistence, whether on a shared facility or in separated facilities, of bicycles and pedestrians. It's a busy corridor, it's a busy crossing, and so I think making sure that we really understand both kind of how that works along the connections between the footbridge and the Southside buffer path, as well as on the crossings across Cambridge Street and on the pathway itself. I think that's why we're glad to see alternatives that have a wide path dimension, because that's really crucial for maintaining that safe condition on the crossing. But I think we're really concerned about it particularly on that northern Cambridge Street sidewalk pathway area, as well as at the crossing over Cambridge Street itself.
Thank you, Matt. Harry, I know you had your hand raised, but we want to give the space to Rita. I believe that there were some drawings that the team wanted to share. Rita?
Yes, I'm here. I guess, first of all, thank you very much for all the work that's been done. This opening a new alternative is really promising just in terms of looking at alternatives and really trying to figure this out. So thank you so much for that. And thanks, Etty, for trying to get through all of these options. We submitted just a revision at a time when basically all that was on the table we thought was the spiral and the loop. And it's really just an attempt to try to continue conceptualizing on ways to improve things. The idea for us was to try to figure out, can we shorten the loop at all by, trying to reconfigure the crossing, maybe also try to soften those corners so that they're not right angles, but eliminate some of the distance that comes with the more open U-turn. I guess what I would say, our feeling is, because so much of the questions are still outstanding in terms of the track, how many tracks, what the depth is going to be, the height and all are still so unresolved that I think it's very hard to get to the best possible choice. So maybe continuing to do some conceptuals, not real in depth, but just, I think as Jim suggested, if maybe we're down to 3 tracks, what does that change and how does that improve something like the loop? That might be very helpful. We wanted to just be clear with regard to that alternative. The 35 Braintree Street property, which is the one that Etty was referring to as being very close, we just wanted to point out some facts about that. The first fact that is pretty important is that there is no residential use on the first floor of that property at all. Anything that's on the track side, according to their own layouts and plans, it's a parking lot, it's a bike room, and it's utility rooms. So as the ramp comes down, it's not as disruptive as one might expect in terms of apartments and living, residents being there. The building is a rental building, it's not condos. And there is also a dog track back there. There are other things that are sort of already built-in buffers to help protect residential users. The other thing is that we're hoping if the track reconfiguration occurs, there might be some opportunities to be creative about landscaping and other things in that area that would offer more protection and actually, in some ways, make that area even more livable than it is now, because these apartments are all on the edge of a railroad track and a major highway. So those pieces are just bits of additional information. The other thing I just wanted to say is it is refreshing to see the direct crossing option and the idea that if the loop and this alternative does come back to be one that can be improved upon, it might offer a nice opportunity to have a gateway into the city. And that could be another positive feature that we might all be able to work on. The height, et cetera, on the tracks is something that once that gets clarified could make a big difference in terms of how feasible this option really is. Having said all that, it's exciting to see the new option. So I guess we've got several things to really work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you. Are there any other questions from anybody else before we go back to Harry? Okay, Harry?
Yeah, could you put up slide 18 for the last slide from the Cambridge Street connection for a sec?
From the slide deck, Harry?
Yeah.
Okay. 18? Oh, sorry, I got the wrong.
It's the last one that shows the aerial of the Cambridge Street connection.
Yeah, I just gotta find it. Yep. 1 second. See this?
Yep. So how many tracks are there under the Cambridge Street Bridge there?
3,
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah. And you have
Yes.
a big green buffer between the rightmost
Yeah,
track and
this
the
is, you can, yeah.
properties?
I wouldn't scale this off. It's a SketchUp model, Harry. This is not a, an engineered drawing by any means, but it definitely frees up room.
Yeah. So if we can mock up this one with 3 tracks, then I hope we can mock
And
up
that's
the
what
U-turn
I
with
was,
3 as well.
that's what I was saying. Yeah, which is why I was talking about that with the U-turn. Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Mike?
Thanks, Francisco. I just wanted to see if we could talk about the connectivity to Linden Street that the new alternative proposes and how people feel about that connection. Is it important to make that connection to Linden? Is it not as important as maybe where we may think it is, or just wanted to have a little, or open up the room for discussion on that particular part and see if we're on the right track with trying to establish a connection there.
Yeah, I'll definitely open it up, Mike. Appreciate that question. Just want everybody to look at that note, that's specific, right? Because there's a lot that goes into that mid-block, and we want to make it clear that it needs to be, the feasibility needs to be determined from, an operational and transportation, but surely that the question is a great question, because we'd like to know people's thoughts on it as well.
Yes, thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Mike.
I just you can keep it here. I think Mike's question is a really good one. I don't think we anticipated a mid-block crossing. It's actually not necessarily mid-block. It's actually closer to the intersection at Linden Street. I'm wondering if we wouldn't want to continue the ramp along the north side of I90 to connect to the Mansfield crossing, because that Mansfield crossing eventually gets over to what West Station Way, or formerly known as the Cambridge Street Bypass Road. And that might be a more reasonable place, because that location, Cambridge Street Bypass Road, I think we had always envisioned it, and I think MassDOT can confirm, that was going to be a protected signalized intersection. And so it might make sense to carry those who are going towards, say, West Station, or going, further east on Cambridge Street to that intersection, as opposed to crossing at Linden.
Yeah, I won't speak for everyone, and anybody on the team could feel free to chime in here. Thanks for the comment, Albert. We've been thinking also, trying to thread the needle between access to the south side buffer, the potential Linden Street, and again the feasibility. We're calling it a mid-block because the bypass road will be coming in, and we're trying to determine kind of standards, guidelines, requirements for being able to, for that crossing to even be feasible. But the further we get toward Lincoln is the further away we get from Franklin Street on the south side. So, trying to kind of balance all of that, but definitely has been something that we've talked about. The team has talked about with DOT, but we felt the need to keep it in a similar location or along the Franklin Street corridor that we've been studying for some time.
Yeah.
But it's something that's worth discussing, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I wasn't suggesting that you remove that connection. I was just saying to add an additional connection that continues on to enable that Mansfield Street crossing. but whoever's traveling further west or south could come back around and go down to Franklin Street as you're showing here. If that makes sense.
Oh, can you say that again? I didn't follow you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't draw on here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Hey, Jim,
putting the bridge.
I'll move my hand if you want.
Yeah,
Jim,
so
let me jump. Go ahead,
Wayne.
No. I think I understand, Albert, your question. We actually did look at an alternative that brought it closer to Mansfield. We don't have it prepared to show you today, but I guess the group's feeling was it brought the connectivity, as Jim mentioned, it brought the connectivity for the pedestrians too far away from the Franklin, Harvard, Linden Street area. But one thing we didn't look at, which is a good comment by yourself, is an additional, maybe like a Y connection off the bridge into another section of Cambridge Street. I think that's what you're suggesting.
That's right. Yeah, so you could maintain the same alignment that you're showing on the screen right now, but then continue the ramp toward it to keep it up towards Mansfield Street along that edge. Yeah.
But that's an interesting idea that probably warrants at least us looking at a little bit. So that's a great comment, Albert.
Yeah, so you don't need to have that mid-block crossing at Linden Street. If that's not what's desired, I don't know what the city's interested in doing. I know Linden Street is a very active corridor, but it is also one way and somewhat narrow. So you might be trying to do too much right there, but again, it's just an idea.
Yeah, no, good point. And without this crossing, and kind of going to your comment, Albert, is what we always kind of envisioned was when that City of Boston project, puts that shared use path in, and the Lincoln Streets, this switchback, we call it, gets softened and more accessible. That's essentially what that would be providing, is that connection that you're talking about without putting another structure in.
I think all of these are like really good comments. What we did here was just really focusing on the replacing of the existing connection. And based on a lot of the comments, we are going to have drawings with a larger connectivity to show all those different possibilities. When we went to the site many times, that is a natural desire line though for a lot of the bike people to go straight into Linden. So, it's just sometimes when there's like a very strong desire line that tells you something about the need for a connection.
Thank you, Eddie. Matt?
Hi, thanks. Yes. So I think one thing that I agree with some of the sentiment, I think with there being a need to keep this crossing as far west as possible or provide a western crossing, because to the city, we really see one of the key values of the Franklin Street connection as being that north-south connector over the highway. And so the further east any connection moves, obviously this is with regards to total path length, from like Franklin Street to Franklin Street, essentially. The further east it moves, the longer that path gets and the lower the utility becomes. One thing I wanted to highlight, and I know this is something that this is partially on my responsibility side. This section shows 2 lanes eastbound on Cambridge Street departing the Harvard Avenue intersection. As you know, there is now only 1 lane feeding into Cambridge Street from either Harvard Ave northbound or Cambridge Street eastbound, just west of the intersection. So I think this is something where I just refreshed a request to our signals team that John Fallon over at MassDOT had sent over in March to review this. So hopefully I can get you an answer, and then we can look at alternatives that have a single eastbound lane between Harvard Ave and Linden. I think with a single eastbound lane between Harvard Ave and Linden, I think the city sees a lot of possibilities, including potentially widening that northern side sidewalk or pathway section, given that this bridge structure is going to be kind of a single level without the grade split. So just wanted to highlight that to you, and I will get information to the project team as soon as possible when I'm able to review with the signals team on the feasibility of the single lane between Harvard and Linden.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so As far as like, just want to note here, you know, thinking about the distances from the north side of Franklin Street, going back to like, you know, getting to the south side. What's interesting is, you know, removing the need to come to the Cambridge Street and go on the sidewalk, essentially be on the streets and the roadways. The need for that with this connection, but they're all very similar in length to get, you know, when you look at the ramping that's required to get up and over. They're very similar in length to get from the, you know, the north side of Franklin, the Lincoln area there over to the south side buffer, which was sort of interesting. And yeah, Matt, thanks for bringing that up as well. You know, it's something that we've been looking at for some time is making that a, you know, a single lane for that length.
Hey, Francisco, if it's okay, I just want to make one comment just to
Sure.
so we don't lose focus. The comment that Michael made is really important, and Jim accentuated. You know, we're kind of focusing back on feedback we got from earlier task force meetings where there was a strong desire line for pedestrians coming off of Linden, and we would like to understand. Please continue the questions, but we would like to understand the working group's thoughts on how important that mid-block crossing is at that location. So I think that's just something I don't want to lose focus of, and I appreciate Michael and Jim bringing it up. But before we're done, it would be good to get the working group's feeling for that, because we've put a lot of thought into that location based on what we had previously heard. Thanks, Francisco.
No, thank you, Wayne. Maddie?
Yeah, thanks. These are all great points, and I love and second the bridges to that one lane between Harvard and London. I think that opens up a lot of like safety opportunities, including, as Wayne said, you know, that could produce a lane for that mid-block crossing at Linden. I am typically only through here via bike, but sharing infrastructure with pedestrians, and I believe I've seen a lot of activity from Linden and trying to get across. I even recall folks, you know, kind of just running across when traffic was clear, the bridge, Cambridge Street Bridge to the existing Ped Bridge. And so I think the way to this bridge alignment is shown, definitely it feels like it's splitting, coming in and splitting hairs between two major crossings, but I think it could provide both a shorter distance for folks with accessibilities or pedestrians, as well as create that similar bike connection that we see today that I think is used pretty heavily from Harvard down to Franklin, North Franklin Street.
Thank you, Maddie. We do have a question on the chat from Al. Can you remind us if the bike connection is one-way or two-way cycle track on the north side on Cambridge Street Bridge? Jim?
Currently, I think it's one way in each direction of traffic, but
Jim, I can cover that one. So
yeah, thanks.
There's a very short segment of two-way bike lane on the approach to Franklin Street westbound. That's sort of at the roadway grade, and then between there and the connection with the Ped Bridge is assumed that has to be, it would have to be a shared condition, so sort of shared bikes and pedestrians on the sidewalk. And that was just due to that space constraint holding those two eastbound lanes. So we did assume that was going to be two-way between Franklin Street and the bridge connection, but obviously, yeah, if we can drop that one of those eastbound lanes, we can fully develop probably a separated bike facility two-way.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks,
Galen, you have your hand raised. Sorry.
Great, yeah, thanks. I just want to chime in. There's a lot of good points coming here, so I'll try to see if I can chime in on most of them. To the point about the desire line from Linden Street across, I think that's incredibly important. That is where, if you're going between the neighborhoods, that is kind of where the bulk of the residential areas are. And I think a lot of people who are going even south or then further east towards BU and on Com Ave, that would be their through corridor. But of course, these days, that is the only way across. So you can imagine that's the desire line now, but as you're building more and more connections, you know, there is the opportunity to kind of poke more holes in this funnel to allow for the flow to dissipate. So you have to balance that concept with the idea that we are also going to induce a lot of demand. If you think about all of the development that is about to happen on Western Avenue, on Harvard TRC, the developments of densification of the neighborhood on both sides, all on Braintree Street, et cetera. So I think we're going to see a huge amount of foot and wheeled traffic. So yeah, so both of those things are kind of in balance in my mind here. But back to the question of the desire line, that is the desire line, essentially, is to get to Linden Street, because that alleviates people having to cross at Harvard Avenue. As I understand it, there's not going to be a lot of modifications to the Harvard Avenue Cambridge Street intersection. Right now, it is pretty damn dangerous because it is all of the truck traffic, all of the bus traffic, all of the Class D traffic, and all of the foot and bike traffic all together put into, again, that funnel. So if there's any way to pull vulnerable users away from that intersection, I highly recommend that this design attracts that and pulls people out of what would be maneuver down to Harvard Avenue just to then get on, Farrington or back down Cambridge Street to make their way east or further south. So that is incredibly important. I too have seen a lot of people scurrying across. Again, lived here for 21 years. I've seen school buses drop kids off at that spot mid-block and then have them cross down to Linden Street. And that avoids the school bus having to somehow make a U-turn to get down into the neighborhoods down there. So yes, highly desired. Also want to remind folks that the original desire line essentially probably was Franklin Street to Franklin Street from between the neighborhoods, and then this infrastructure was built. So we are also looking at repairing some of the disconnectivity that, I don't even know if it's a real word to use here, that the highway and the trains caused. So think of this also as what kind of repair can be done in this project. Because again, we are reconnecting communities. The money that we have on the table is reconnecting communities. So keeping that as the primary, not like, oh, wouldn't it be nice, which I understand is not the tone of this, but I just kind of want to remind folks as they leave this working group and they bring this to the rest of their colleagues in the consulting and the DOT, that, oh yeah, actually this is the only thing, as I understand it, that is moving forward with funding. So let's make sure that this is done with the priorities that is deserved of reconnecting the communities. So keeping that desire line as well as Linden Street down to the Franklin Street down to there as well. I do really appreciate the Mansfield Street crossing because that is a third opportunity, and you see people crossing there all the time as well. We are going to get two-way traffic on both of the bikeways, so just keep that in mind. However you build it and sign it, like two-way traffic is going to happen. Also, people who are having shopping carts full of cans, people who have strollers with kids, people who are just, going about walking and rolling between the neighborhoods. So do not assume that just like an 8-foot wide cycle track for unidirection is going to cut it on this. Again, induced demand, we're going to see a lot of different uses. I actually like in one of the BHP presentations a while ago, I tried to introduce the concept of anarchy zone. Shared use, sure, but I actually prefer the term anarchy zone. Like there is no hierarchy of who uses this. If it's protected from the truck traffic, it's going to be used by all sorts of people, which is kind of cool. It's kind of okay. We're going to be okay with it. Do not put into your engineering guidelines that this is a one-directional corridor for bikes. This is going to be a whoever goes anywhere at whenever they want to type of concept. And then lastly, I do want to kind of bring this back to the philosophical point of, we are reconnecting communities with this project. Again, we are doing a lot of reconnecting of roadways. We're going to be building new on and off ramps to Soldiers Field Road. We're going to be building new on and off ramps to and from the Pike. Let's have that same mentality for what we're doing here and not think like, oh, if we have this, then we might not need that. No, back to Albert's point, this should be a yes and type of conversation because people will need to go where people need to go, and they're going to use whatever is the, like water goes where it is the least resistance. We're going to have people going wherever they have the least resistance, and we need to make sure that we are providing safe alternatives for them to go south, east, west, north, etc. However, this is back to the funnel analogy. This is the funnel. Everything comes down to this. I know we're all concerned with the throats being the pinch point. I actually think this is more crucial than the throat because this is where people can actually get crushed by trucks. The throat is tough, don't get me wrong, but I think this is actually the one where we have the dangers of, children crossing from school buses. So put as much intentionality as could be into providing as many connections across here, making them as safe as possible, making them as separate from traffic. And don't think that just because we have one footbridge and overpass that it's going to suffice, because we are going to have so much more needs in the next 100 years here. Don't think about what we're building for in 2024. Don't think about what we're building for when this is done in 2050. Think about what this is actually going to be in 2100, and to make sure that we are doing whatever we can to have a permeability to go across. So from a philosophical standpoint, I kind of want to throw that out there while I have the mic unmuted. So with that, I'll throw it back. So thanks.
Thank you, Galen. No, those are concepts that totally resonate with me, and certainly designing for the old style of 5 feet for a bicycle lane is old, especially for an area like this. There was some, sorry, Harry, question that Matt put on the chat. Jim, I don't know if you want to, address it.
I'm just reading it now.
Yeah, is there a possibility of a ramp from the end of Franklin Street south side up to the intersection of Pitt Bridge and the Cambridge Street Bridge? The shortening connection between from Brain Street to the bridge and pull that out of the Harvard-Cambridge intersection. Braintree Street is planned to have a high-quality bikeway and will connect folks coming from the growing neighborhoods to the west.
And I'll say something, Jim. I mean, this is something that Chris Osgood and I we asked the question to ourselves when we first saw this concept yesterday. I think, the way we see it, like, this is something where, the question of how this interacts with the Southside Buffer Path, I think that having the Southside Buffer Path go under Cambridge Street Bridge still makes a lot of sense, because you want to have that grade separated connection. I think the reason I'm asking this question is whether it's feasible. Exactly. Yeah. I think just to provide that access up to the bridge without having to throw people into the intersection. I understand if we get rid of one eastbound lane, we may have a little more room to make that intersection a little safer, but it's something where it's never going to be great, and you will be exposed to more traffic volume if you are kind of coming from Braintree Street to get up to the bridge here. And so was just curious about that. Understand that this now it takes away some of the benefits you guys have had in terms of alleviating the 4F impacts. So if that's a deal breaker, totally get it. But was just curious to see if that had been explored.
So it would be within the Southside Buffer Path corridor is essentially what it would take up width of the Southside Buffer Path, correct?
Some of that width, perhaps, yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, no, it has not been, discussed or studied.
Yeah, if it's a bad idea, happy to be told that. But I think it's
any ideas
sure.
is why we're here. So
and the reason I'm reading it up is also to answer Wayne's question about the Linden Street crossing. I think for the city, for me, the reasons that Galen kind of articulated, I think we would be very concerned to see the Cambridge Street connection alternative chosen without a strong and safe and comfortable mid-block crossing. Not mid-block. It's an intersection without a strong and comfortable crossing at Linden Street. Due to the high demand and the likelihood of something, stuff people will be crossing there if the bridge is there, kind of no matter what. And so
yeah, exactly,
I think we'd be really worried about an alternative that didn't have that crossing. I think from the city perspective, we're open to a lot of different things at Linden Street in terms of function better and how to accommodate whatever needs to happen if there is some kind of signalization there or crossing. But just wanted to raise that the city does see it as an important component of this alternative, is that Linden Street crossing.
Thank you, Matt.
So Matt, just to get back to so if you have ideas of concepts, if you want to throw them on just a piece, sketch something,
sure,
and send it to us. I mean, we're definitely open to ideas.
Yeah, we have a few things that we sketched out that we can send over. One thing we did raise, and this is something where I think we, with the kind of maybe a mitigating factor for the, not having the Southside Buffer Path connection be as direct, like having to go down Cambridge Street around Franklin and onto the buffer path, is that from our perspective, and correct us, happy to be corrected on this, if someone is accessing the south side buffer path here, it's highly likely that they intend to stay on the south side buffer path for a while. They want to go regionally, they want to move farther down the river, they want to have that very comfortable experience kind of off street on the path towards the park area and the Throat and the Esplanade. If someone was moving towards the West Station area and coming off this Cambridge Street connection, it's our thinking, and again, happy for Galen to tell me I'm being an idiot here, but we would be thinking that they'd be crossing Cambridge Street and then moving along Cambridge Street towards West Station Way or one of the other streets that go into the station area to access the amenities and services and their house or whatever inside the station area. And so for that, because of that, I think we're less concerned about maybe there being a little bit of extra cloverleaf distance for the person getting to the south side buffer path, because that distance from the end of the bridge landing down to the buffer path is going to be a much smaller fraction of their overall journey than the very short trip that somebody's making, to West Station to access transit or whatever it is. So that's something that we've been talking through on the city side, trying to think through the different connectivity options here. But just wanted to bring that up, and I realize we're at time, so I apologize for taking up time.
No, thank you, Matthew. And we are at time, so I want to be respectful from everybody's time. This has been a very thoughtful, helpful conversation. We are closing for today, but when we meet back again in 2 weeks, we'll have a more targeted discussion by stakeholder. We want to have input from everybody, and connectivity analysis definitely will be something that will be working at the next time that we meet. And we will dedicate at a minimum the first hour of our next meeting. If anybody has any particular questions, desires of information that needs to be further discussed, clarified, other ideas that are jumping at it, again, as I mentioned earlier, please send them to Susan, Mike, and myself, and we'll make sure that it makes its way to our design team. And thank you again for everybody. This is helpful, it's fruitful, and it's making a project that is going to be there for generations, a much better product that we'll be able to produce. So with that said, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful Friday. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco.
Thanks, Francisco. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.